What's good, beautiful people? Welcome to a brand new episode of Yes, the GBA podcast. This is a platform where guilty by association meets gritty blissful ambiguity. I'm your host, Rain. And today I'm very excited about this episode because this guest is very, very, very interesting. He has a crazy life story, and we love stories, especially those with a happy ending, so to speak, for himself, but yet his people do not have a happy ending yet. We're talking about Palestine. We're talking about an author who is from Palestine, but lives in the US of A, kind of like not by choice. He was one of the people that have been chased out of their land and forced to start a brand new life somewhere else. And but we will get into this in a second. Before that, I have two shout outs. One of the shout outs goes to Faiza. Thank you so much for your beautiful message. I love you right back. And the next shout out goes to Cheesecake. Thank you so much for supporting and always being on point and very, very funny with your messages. I really do appreciate them. So thank you guys for tuning in wherever you tuned in from. And now I think I've talked enough. Let's get to the guest. He goes by the name of Imad Saeed or Imad Deen. He's a Palestinian author and a human being, I guess, with that crazy story. So, Imad, welcome to the podcast.
Assalamu alaikum. Thank you for having me.
Alaikum salam.
It's actually Emad Saadi. Well, for English people, they can't pronounce it, but almost most people say Sadeh. Emad Saadi.
They say Sadeh.
So, yeah, because they can't pronounce it's Shahid, Sadi, Sadu, Sadi, Saddam.
Exactly
you know how it is. So
they put letters there that don't even exist in the name. That's so funny.
Or they switch. They put the S with the H, and it's Shahid, and but it's understandable. It's not their tongue, and I usually don't take offense to it. But yeah.
It's not so much about offense, but it's more like I just hate that a lot of our people are forced to change their names just to make it easier for the Western world,
Exactly.
And I think it's wrong because they also have some crazy names, that were words that are even for them difficult to pronounce. So I would suggest a little bit of effort and a little bit of more respect towards somebody's identity doesn't hurt.
Yes. Yes. So did you want me to start? I'll introduce my name is, like I said, Imad Saadi. Imad. My author name is Imaduddin or Imaduddin, spelled with an E. I have two books. One is called The Jerusalem-Gangster, and the other one is called My Land, Palestine. Both definitely deal with the Palestinian issue. I was born in Jerusalem in 1966 in a small hospital right outside the old city walls called Al-Muttala. My brothers and sisters, I have 5 brothers and sisters, 6 totaling with me. I lived in Sheikh Jarrah. A year after I was born, the rest of historical Palestine was taken and occupied by the Zionist entity, which is known now as the so-called State of Israel. I say the so-called State of Israel because I personally do not recognize it. To recognize it would mean to invalidate myself and unrecognize myself as a human being, as a Palestinian. My identity would be erased.
Right. So when did you leave? When did you leave?
Yes, I left as a young boy with no choice. I had no choice. My family, obviously. My dad was constantly imprisoned by the so-called Israelis and tortured. And finally, he was able to migrate from Palestine to the United States, specifically the city of Chicago in 1973. So I was without a father from 73 till 1978. So I left in August.
Let me stop you right there, just to get, I want to do this bit by bit so we can, get a lot of clarifications. So you grew the first 6 years you grew up without a dad. I mean, the first 7 years. Was your dad able to be present in those 7 years at all? Like, did you remember him at all when you were like when you left Palestine?
Yeah, well, I was born in 66. My dad left at 73. I do obviously remember him somewhat, when you're old enough to remember him. Yes, I remember him because he was there with me until 73. So I was 7 years old.
So was your dad an activist? Was this because he kind of like what was the reason why they treated him the way they treated him, like tortured him, locked him up? The
Well, my
reason why I'm
dad,
asking, I just want to make sure that
yeah,
the audience who don't know understand it doesn't take much in Palestine to be
yeah,
arrested by the Israeli
well,
forces.
yeah, well, for most Palestinians, just being Palestinian is enough reason to be arrested, imprisoned, humiliated, and whatever else you could put on.
Mhm.
But specifically for my family, my uncle had been exiled. He fought whatever little weapons they had during the so-called 6 Day War. He was captured. He was exiled to Jordan, and then he came back through Jordan and did an operation, attempted an operation against the so-called state, the newly created state of Israel within the areas of the after 67. So he was already, the family was already had a red dot on it, and my uncle was court-martialed and was sentenced to 125 years in prison. So they already knew that my father and my uncle, they were a part of the Popular Front for the Liberation of Palestine. So he had what we would say, he was in the crosshairs. So every time a demonstration went on, a peaceful demonstration in the old city or anything like that, they would come pick up my dad, take him, question him, torture him, and then he would probably sometimes he would disappear for 6 months, sometimes he would disappear for a year.
Do you did you reconnect with your dad, reconcile with your dad when once you left Palestine and came to the US?
Well, yeah, we reconnected when I was 12 years old. That was 1978.
Mhm.
Me and my two brothers were allowed. Our paperwork came back, and our visa was accepted. Our visa was accepted and or given, and we received a permanent residency card, a green card, and obviously migrated to the United States. It was the
And your
three
mom?
boys first. My mom came in '76 just to set things up with my dad, and then went back home. And in 1978, we were allowed to come. The three boys were allowed to come. And in 1979, the three girls were allowed to come, my three sisters.
Okay. That's beautiful that you guys
Mm,
got to reunite again.
mm,
I
mm,
love that.
yeah.
So, as I said, let's do this step by step. So you
Yes.
came to Chicago at 12 years old, which is a very
Mm,
crucial age because these
mm,
is puberty, this is teenage age, and it's very, very easy, obviously, to get on the wrong path, especially
mm,
when you come to a very, very, very different new country,
mm,
coming from such an oppressed and suppressed country. And
mm.
now I guess you're kind of like indirectly forced for some recognition as well, right?
Yes, and the sad part about it is I left a very oppressive society, or a very oppressed society by
Mhm.
another society, only to come and find out that this society here is also oppressive too. I came and moved into a neighborhood called the Marquette Park area, and it was a very, very racist neighborhood at the time. This was the area that Martin Luther King was stoned when he came up to Chicago. So I didn't speak English. As a 12-year-old, I wound up in a school with a small group of Palestinians who were oppressed in the school, who were spit on, beat up, made fun of. And I had already come, I was already uh, been raised a different way. I was already a fighter. So I didn't accept any of it. I fought the whole school year. The whole year I fought. I probably had 50 fights that year.
Oh my
I
gosh.
just was not going to tolerate it. I was not going to accept it. And I fought, and I was, suspended a few times. And I just felt like that's, this is what it's come down to. I leave one oppressive regime to come to another area where I'm going to be oppressed. And I'm looking at these Arabs and they're being
Mm.
treated. And I'm thinking, you don't fight back. So I became the fighter and the stand-up guy for the small community of Palestinian students.
Okay. Yeah, that's exactly what I'm talking about. So you had to fight for recognition and you probably, like coming from this place is just like, I'm not gonna let this happen to me again. But
Exactly.
when you're like 12 years old or 10 years old, 8 years old, growing up in these times, did you actually really understand what was happening in Palestine? Did you
Oh,
understand
100,
why?
100, 100%, 100%. I understood what was happening. I was already burning tires in the street. At age 10, I was already throwing rocks at age 10,
Oh my
11.
gosh.
Because this is our identity. This is what we grew up for. Palestinian in general, for Palestinians, especially if you grew up in a household where the men in the house were already revolutionary types, there was no room for childhood, so to speak. You
Yes.
become a man at a very early age, and you realize one thing, that as a man or woman in Palestinian society, the weight of the nation falls on your shoulders, whether you like it or not. It's just the way things are. It's just the way you're geared. It's just the way you're made up. Is that, listen, you have a responsibility, you have a duty. It comes naturally. It doesn't have to be you don't have to be indoctrinated. Your eyes tell you, your ears tell you. You see the humiliation of your people, of your mom, of your dad, of your grandparents, of your neighbors, who adults who can't even help their kids when they come to snatch the kids and take them to jail. A father can't even defend his own children. Imagine how a child looks at his father, and then it's left to the child and to the men and women of this society to defend themselves and to defend. So it falls on your shoulder. The whole nation, the whole burden falls on your shoulder, whether you like it or not. No one has to tell you. It just becomes a natural part of the process. That's it.
Do you, it's very, so did you understand at that time what Zionism is, or did you just, was it just like more,
I
okay, these people came here and they just trying to suppress us? Did you understand why and what for?
Well, here's the thing. I didn't, as a child, you don't really
Exactly, yeah.
understand Zionism in its true definition, but I understood that these people were not from the land. They were not here. I'm looking at a bunch of Europeans, vast majority Europeans. Now, there was some Arab
Mhm,
Jews from Iraq and from other places.
mhm.
I'm not talking about Palestinian Jews, but I'm talking about like Iraqi Jews and Jewish people from other places that were there. But predominantly, I was looking at people who were European, and I knew that they didn't fit. It doesn't take rocket science to know that this person is from Europe, and is not from here. So I knew that part. I couldn't understand the part of why they came to us and how did we wind up with them. And I can't sometimes question it as I walk down the streets and seen them walking with weapons slung over their shoulders and holding hands, and in the old city, walking around disrespectfully with their pants hanging off and their underwear showing
Are you
sometimes.
serious?
Oh yeah, you know how they call sagging in the United States? They
Yeah,
were
they
doing
did that as well?
they
Or
did that.
was it,
That's why I say to the guys here, listen, this stuff you're doing, the Europeans did it way before you. So the Israeli soldiers would do that. It would be a female soldier and a male soldier, and they both have their M16s, and his pants are sagging, half her underwear is almost showing,
oh,
and
why?
he's got his hands down her pants, and she's got his hands, and they're walking
Are
like
you
this down the street. Oh
serious?
yeah, oh yeah, oh yeah. Anybody from
Oh,
that era will tell you. So I knew I couldn't understand how we wound up with them and why did they show up and why are we dealing with this? Are we the only people dealing with this? And it's just a lot of
is
questions
there a
going
reason
through
for
your
this
mind.
behavior?
They're just they're different than us, especially at that time. I mean, like Western society, they're Europeans, and they probably behaved that way.
Oh,
Coming, they go back and forth. It's just
okay.
not like us. You know what I mean?
Okay. So, um, let's go back to the US. So, you said you had 55s. I guess that was the start of your rebellious self. When and how did you, so to speak, get on the wrong path? Like,
Well, here's the thing. That was a rebellion against racism and
yes,
oppression. I learned to speak
very
English within
true.
like about 6 months, and I started to realize
Wow.
exactly what they were saying, and they were calling us camel jockeys and
MashaAllah.
sand ends and towel heads, and they'd make fun of our language, things like that.
Oh
And
my gosh.
but that was in a particular area. Then we moved in 1980. We moved to another area called the Back of the Yards in Chicago. Were 20 blocks north and about 10 blocks east. And it was a totally different group of people. Although they were European Americans there, they weren't racist like that. A few of them were, but not like that. They were very accepting, and the neighborhood was at least half Hispanic Americans, and they were very, very accepting people in that neighborhood, and we felt welcome there. Unfortunately, things between me and my dad, or my dad and us, even before moving to that neighborhood, my dad was very abusive. He beat up my mom. He beat us up. I mean, he was a very,
But
he was an honorable.
he was
He
like
was
traumatized already.
yeah. So he was very brutal, very brutal. I mean, he beat us like we would, like Mike Tyson would beat somebody up. And so I couldn't take it anymore. And I sometimes told my dad, my mom, please, me and my mom were best friends. We were very, very close. I'm the oldest. She was my world. She was my everything. She was a soldier. I was very close to her. Most of the kids were,
I
if
love
not
it.
all close. And I told her divorce him, and that how our cultures look at that,
Yeah.
aib, shame, and
Yeah.
stuff like that. So finally, I ran away from home, and I was actually accepted in by the local gang in the neighborhood, who were already my friends before I left home. I felt left home comfortable enough to know that I had somewhere to go. If
So you were 14 at that
I
time,
was about 14 years old,
and
just
you
turned.
ran off. So you made friends with the local gangs,
Yes.
just by default, I guess, right?
Yes. Yeah. I mean, yeah, I liked them. They were fighters. I was a fighter.
Okay.
They were
That's what I
pretty
wanted
tough
to make
guys,
sure.
and,
Yeah.
I mean, so we got along pretty good.
Mhm.
They seen that I was a pretty tough guy long before I became a part of the gang. That's the difference between them days and these days. You were tough, then you become a gang member. Not become a gang member, then become tough.
So true.
Yeah.
Yeah,
So that's
so okay, so you ran off and you went to your friends. They took you in.
yes. And they treated me like a brother. The moms treated me like a son. The fathers treated me like a son. Yes, we were, engaged in gang activity and stuff, but it was much different than now.
Did you
But
still go to school?
no, I had my first year of high school. I had already messed up so much gang banging that there was no going back to school. And
And did you let your mom and your dad or your siblings know where you was at that time, or they had no
well,
idea?
they knew I was with the local gang. They understood there was a particular family I was close with,
Mm,
and I was living with them. And
okay.
it's just I couldn't deal with him anymore. I actually had plotted to
Uh, okay, yeah. And
you
then?
know I
Don't. Yeah.
yeah, but I had it's in my book anyways.
Okay,
So
okay.
anyways, yeah, so I had already plotted to do some great bodily harm to him before he was doing to my mom. I actually stole a gun from somebody, and showed my sister that if he hit my mom again, I was going to unalive him. And to my surprise, that's immediately she started crying, and it kind of scared the hell out of me as a 13-year-old. And I said, well, I guess I'm the only one feeling that way, and I aborted that plan to do it. But that's how
Okay.
bad things had gotten. Yeah.
Mm. Okay, so then you was involved in all of these gang activities at that
Yes.
young age, and this went
Yes.
on and on and on and on,
Yes.
and
I
then
wound.
until
I
you got
was.
locked up. What was
Yeah.
the
No.
occasion, if you can share?
Yeah. I was actually arrested and locked up as a juvenile.
Oh,
Uh, my first case was a gun case. I got caught with a gun.
what
And
age?
I think it was about 14 years old, going
Mhm.
into 15. Then I was arrested for an attempt murder on somebody else. I eventually went to state prison for that. I received a 4-year sentence times 4 running concurrent, which I wound up at 18 years old. I did 2 years in state prison, and was released at age 20, um, and you know, at that point, I realized I became such good friends with many different gang members that some of them I had been fighting with on the street, and I realized that you know th that itself was probably not the way to go, and I laid off a little bit off the gang activity, although I was still active, but not quite like I was before I went to prison.
Would you say the prison changed you, or would you say just
Well,
making friends with these people from the opposite side changed you?
well, that's what kind of you know, it was like this. You know, I fought with these people. We were killing or attempting to unalive each other on the street.
Mhm.
And then I wind up with them, and we're breaking bread, and we're, you know, watching movies together, and we're having conversations, and we're working out together, and we're walking the yard together, and we developed like almost a brotherhood. So I kind of felt funny that so now I'm gonna go back out to the street, and I'm gonna go back to the same thing, and I'm gonna go back to like trying to unalive each other. It's just too hypocritical. I just couldn't look myself in the mirror. So although my allegiance was to my gang, I wasn't really. So it was basically my friendship with those individuals. I just couldn't see to go out and fight with them. It would be too funny. If that's the case, you might as well fight when you're in there.
And how did your gang friends take to that?
Oh,
That you became
no, they were fine with it. I had done enough stuff for my nation, my gang,
mm,
that, you know, there was no questioning of and plus I wasn't and not to toot my own horn, I wasn't a guy to kind of be messed with, to be honest with you. I had done enough work, what we call work within the nation, that I was respected already, you know, to the point where you just we there's no questioning in his loyalty
mhm.
and dedication. You know what I mean?
So when you came out at 20 years old, did life become better for you, or did you get locked up again?
Well, life, when I got out, and the drug game was so
Popping.
lucrative,
Mm.
but I stayed away from it. Some of my friends were during the time I was gone, the cocaine epidemic was really had taken off. Money was unbelievable amounts of money were being made. Some of my friends had become rich while I was gone. And well, you know, I got out, and I had learned a trade while I was in there as a auto body technician. So I was doing auto body work, and I stayed away from the drug game, even though with all its uh, lucrative money, you know, where you could become rich within 6 months of dealing in this product called cocaine. But I stayed away, and then finally I had an accident. I broke my leg. I couldn't work, and I got sucked. I had an accident on a Harley Davidson. I broke my leg, and I stopped working. And my friend said, I told you, man, get in with me." And finally, I succumbed to that, and I got involved in the drug game. And I made a ton of money. I basically,
Must have been the crack era in the 80s, right?
yeah, we didn't deal in crack though. We dealt in strictly powder cocaine.
Yeah, yeah.
But the crack epidemic was definitely, it was that era. But we dealt in kilos and half kilos and ounces, and I mean, we had where we broke kilos into ounces, half ounces, quarter ounces. The smallest was quarter ounces, and all the way up to kilos. So I mean, most of your bread and butter was from breaking down the keys into ounces and quarter pounds and half ounces. You know, you pay at the time. I think I got down to paying 13,500 a key, and I was making close to 40,000, 30-some thousand dollars a kilo.
Mhm. Wow. That
Yeah,
is a lot of money.
yeah, yeah.
So at that time, were you close to your family, or were you just like still being more
I was
away?
on my own. Of course, me and my mom were always close.
How did
Uh,
she feel about all of this, you being in prison? Did she come to see you? Did you make her stay away? How?
Well, my mom's a soldier. My mom has always been on my side. My mom was an excellent person who lived by the law. I mean, she didn't jaywalk if she didn't have to.
Mm,
But She was always by my side. She never abandoned me. She disagreed with a lot of things I did, but she loved me as her son. And she would come see me, but that was a federal case. So
Yeah.
my dad by that time had left her.
Yeah.
She was
Oh,
my
he
brother.
left her.
Yeah, he left her,
Mm.
abandoned her right after I went away, which was
Good
which
for
was
her.
yeah, exactly. But at that time, he wasn't. The beatings had already stopped. By that time, we weren't little kids to accept any beatings.
Yeah.
But so she was by herself in the old neighborhood. My brother was with her. Sometimes my sister. Everybody was out on their own. But she came to see me a few times, but I didn't want to toll on her. I didn't want to, And then when you're in federal custody, and once you're doing federal time, we live in Illinois and Chicago. Federal, you could be placed in California,
Yes. Yes.
Florida,
Yes.
New York, Michigan.
Mm-hmm.
So I wasn't gonna have my mom drag herself and come all the way to Louisiana, where I might have been, or Michigan, which is 4 or 5 hours away, or even in Illinois. When I was in Illinois, I was like, I think like 4 hours, 3.5 hours away from Chicago. So I talked to her on the phone every single day, even if I called her for 2, 3 minutes just to check on her. There wasn't a day that went past that I didn't talk to my mom. Not one day, unless we were locked down and we couldn't get to the phone.
So did you get arrested
I got
during
arrested.
your drunk?
Yes, I got arrested by FBI and DEA
Ooh.
for a multi-kilo conspiracy, 50 to 150 kilograms of cocaine, and a rate of about 100, estimated about $100,000 a week.
I still want to ask where the money went.
Believe it or not, money like that don't last too long.
Exactly. How
And
that
then
money doesn't
when
last.
you get arrested and you go to jail, you have money here, you have money there, because you can't. What are you gonna do with the money? You gotta hide it somewhere. You can't take it to the bank. So you have it by these people's house and those people's house, and you have a little here and a little there. And guess what? When you get arrested and you go away, everybody thinks you're going away for life. So they start,
Spending.
spending the money, stealing the money, messing up the money. I had a motor home, I had cars, everything disappears within about 6, 7 months.
Amazing.
And, I was facing a life sentence. So, how
How long
goes.
did you do? If you were facing life, but how long did you?
I did 13 years.
Wow.
I went in 25, got out 38. And I had, pretty good lawyers that at least the best you could expect from lawyers like that is, especially federal court, it's difficult to beat a case. It's it's a railroad system. But at least if you have a good lawyer, it could get your sentence down to and obviously for me as an individual who has morals and has dignity, I didn't cooperate with the government like many people have done. And I fought my case for a year. I was in segregation for a year fighting my case. They placed me in segregation where I couldn't come out of my cell for 24 hours a day, and in order to pressure me to cooperate, but it didn't work. And I took my own way. I took my own medicine, and that was it.
I will definitely have a few questions pertaining to your time inside, but I want to go down the timeline. So 38, you come out, and what happens next?
Went back home and was living with my mom, and we had a supermarket. I worked there with my family, with my brother actually.
So
And
he
then
owned it.
my mom owned it.
Oh, beautiful. Okay,
Yeah,
I love it.
yeah. We've
Look at
always
that.
the kids always run businesses, but it's
No, I
usually
just love the fact that she went through all of this and then
all
still
of that.
had,
Went broke and built it back up, and yeah,
yes, had the energy to actually, start her own
yes,
business, and I love it.
yeah. Well, she had
Okay.
one of my brothers was really although we do have some disagreements, we don't speak much now because of certain things. But I always give credit where credit's due.
Yeah.
My baby brother, stood by her side, and he actually, he struggled and he helped, and he made things happen.
I love it.
Yeah.
So, okay, so you worked at the supermarket.
Yes.
And
And then we built up another business, a truck wash business, mobile truck wash business. And eventually I couldn't take the business there no more because it was a liquor store. As a Muslim, I constantly told my mom, we need to sell it. It's got pork, it's got liquor, it's got this.
yeah.
And then finally I left the store in 2010 under good pretenses, but it actually was some bad stuff going on behind my back. But I took care of the truck wash, and me and my brother parted ways. My mom was sick by this time, and she eventually passed away in December 5th, 2010. I stayed in a room with her for about 2 weeks, sleeping with her, hoping she would come out of the situation. But unfortunately, Allah called her, and that was that. And I've been basically, I was married. I have a child who's 10 years old, a little girl, and I wasn't actually expecting to have kids, but Allah gave me this little girl. I named her after my mom, and alhamdulillah, I ran my own trucking business, and marriage didn't work out, and so
happens, unfortunately.
yeah. So I have my daughter now, and I do a lot of social work. I know we skipped through a lot of things, and I'll leave the book to tell some of that stuff.
Yeah, definitely.
But I've always been active in the Palestinian issue. I've been fighting for Palestine most of my life, as you can tell from my early age. My family has also uncle, father, but I left my trucking business, sold the trucks with the divorce, and I do gang prevention, violence prevention in Chicago. I work with different organizations to try to stem the violence and get young men to go into school and get jobs and things like that. And that's what I do now.
Is that your main job?
Yes, that's what I do. Yes,
I love
yes,
that.
and I give talks here and there, and I've even addressed students at Illinois State University for Professor Charles Bell, who is a professor that had his students. Most of his students will be lawyers and police officers and corrections officers and counselors, and I address them a few times a year. They actually say that they learn more from individuals like myself. They do learn from the books themselves that they're taught out of. So life experience is very important. I am back in school. I have 2 math classes. After these 2 math classes, I should have my bachelor's degree in urban studies.
I love that.
Yeah, so that's some of the stuff. I've written obviously the 2 books.
Yeah, we're gonna get to the 2 books in a second. I just want to touch. Just want to have a few other questions.
Yes.
So you've been locked up a few times, as we now just learned. But the 13-year prison sentence was obviously the hardest. When you talk about solidarity confinement and looking at life actually, and then just doing 13 years.
Yes.
What was the most important lesson you got from this experience?
Well, there's quite a few lessons. I don't know what's the most important lesson I learned.
What stuck with you?
What stuck with me, most of all, is Islam.
That's where I was gonna go, because you made a statement, and that's actually what this actually stuck with me, a statement that you made, and it kind of like touched me. You said because how we connected is over the internet, and we met on some platform, and I heard you speak, and then you said that you didn't want to have anything to do with Islam. You didn't want to hear about religion, know about religion. You just didn't give an F about it, so to speak, right? And then you said there were some people, and you mentioned African Americans particularly, that didn't give up on you, and they kind of like took you in, and they kind of like basically help you to get on the right path, especially with Islam.
Exactly. I'll tell you, when at age 13, I remember clearly my dad beating me up and me walking into the bathroom. I remember standing at the sink, looking at the mirror. My eyes were red. I had been um, I hated my dad at that point, and I remember crying, and I looked up at the ceiling in that bathroom, and I said to Allah, I said, I want you to know that I am at war with you. You've done this to me. If you exist, you've done this to me, and you allow this guy to do this to us and my mother. I am at war with you. I am letting you know now. If you exist, I am at war with you. I don't believe in you. I don't want anything to do with you or this religion, so
But
to
did you
speak.
grow up religious though?
No,
Not at all.
not at all. No, I didn't
Okay.
grow up religious, but I knew I was a Muslim. I knew the only thing I knew about Islam, and the only thing that I understood growing up is, remember, Palestine was a different place at that time.
Yeah.
Very secular. And you're talking about my dad, who was a part of the Popular Front for the Liberation of Palestine, or a stern believer in Popular Front ideology.
Mhm.
It's a communist ideology. It's a Marxist ideology. So if my mom said Allah, my dad would say, shut up, there is no Allah. So I didn't grow up with that. My mom...
Was he atheist, or would you not go
yeah,
that far?
oh, atheist, 100% atheist.
Okay, okay.
100. Well, you know, he believed in the Marxist ideology and didn't believe that there was a God.
Yeah.
So he was a part of George Habash's group, more my uncle than my dad, but my dad was definitely, you know, a borderline guy with them. But so I didn't. The only thing I did know as a child growing up, and I used to play in Masjid al-Aqsa. I used to play in the courtyard, Masjid al-Aqsa. The only thing I knew is that Allah was one, and I knew that Prophet Muhammad, peace be upon him, was his messenger. Alayhi salatu wasalam, was his messenger. And I only knew قل هو الله أحد الله الصمد لم يلد ولم يولد ولم يكن له كفوا أحد. That's the only thing I knew about Islam right there. Those three things. You know? So
it's a start.
Yes, that's the only thing I knew. So I understood that, and I understood what we believed in, that there was different than Christians or anybody else, is that we believe that Allah is one and Prophet Muhammad is his messenger, alayhi salatu wasalam. And that was what I was talking about when I said, you know, that part that I believed in, I no longer believe in it. I don't want to be a part of it. I don't want to be a part of you. And I am at war with you.
At 14.
At 13, probably.
13, sorry. Yeah.
Yes. Yes.
And then, so fast forward to the
So
13
then
years.
when I wound up in prison, I was in downtown Chicago in the holding facility, and there was an older Palestinian man, and it was Ramadan. And I was standing at the railing on the second platform smoking, and it was Ramadan, and the old Palestinian man, very nice guy, came up to me and said, Imad, it's Ramadan. You're not fasting. And I said, Sheikh, I said, you fast for me. You fast.
So typical.
Yeah, I said, you fast for me. I'm not fasting. I didn't want to get rude with him and tell him all the stuff, and then we would get into a big lecture about why I should believe and why I should. So I just said, no, Sheikh, you fast for me. Go ahead, you fast. And that was in 1993, and then from that time, you know, they would say, oh man, come to, you know, Juma. And I say, look, let me tell you something. I see all you guys have, the Christians, they have a Bible, the Jews, they have the Torah, the Muslims, they're going to Juma and they have the Quran and they're reading religious books. I said, you think that you doing all that is actually somebody, somehow, some way, miraculously, the front door is going to open and let you out? You know, you don't fool me. I sure don't believe that you're fooling God. You stick to that. I don't need it. I came in without religion, without God. I'm going to stay that way. And that's always been my attitude. I've always had a lot of dignity and a lot of self-discipline when it comes to certain things, weaknesses like that, to be weak. And I believed myself not to be weak. And I felt like I didn't need anything. I didn't need it out there. I don't need it in here. I'll do my time. Whatever the repercussions of my actions were, I was willing to accept them without having to pick up a book and pretend to be godly and religious.
And when did it change? And what was what was the shift?
Yes,
the moment.
About 19. One time I had a problem with a Puerto Rican guy, and I remember this was in 94, And we were going, they were waiting in the unit to go because they send units by unit to go eat. So we were waiting to go eat, and I had a problem, kind of a fight with a Puerto Rican guy. And one of the black Muslims was telling another black Muslim, "Hey man, did you hear about the Muslim brother, the Arab brother? He had a problem with somebody." And the older gentleman, the older African American, his back was to me. He didn't see me. I wasn't far from them. I could hear their conversation. And he said to him, "Yeah, well, brother, as long as he stays away from Allah, he's always going to have problems." And I felt the size of an ant at that time. And it really struck a chord with me. I felt the size of an ant, given that here's an African American who was oppressed. His people were oppressed from the United States, clinging to my religion that I was supposedly raised with. And he's saying that as long as this guy stays away from Islam, he is going to always have problems. And that made me feel small. I probably felt smaller than an ant at that time. And they never knew I heard this conversation. I absorbed it and kind of walked away in deep thought. And that was some of the first. Yeah.
But it's crazy that this affected you when you know, like you kind of like declared war on God. I mean, obviously at 13 years old, you know, like obviously now you're 28, you're much older, double the age and everything. But it's crazy that it affected you. I just, wow.
Yes, it did. It did. And that it affected me most is that this guy, in a way, in a far off place, was actually believing in my religion that I was born into more than me. I felt at that point, at that time, like, what's the matter with you? You know, like, you have more of a right to be talking like that, in a sense, not that a God-given right, but this poor person just learned this religion probably in adulthood. You were born into this religion, and he is more clinging on to it than you. You know, so that was one of the first things.
Yeah. When did you take that?
I went to Jumu'ah about 2 Fridays after that, the first Jumu'ah ever. Yes. Okay. And I went to Jumu'ah. I didn't know how to pray or anything like that. I just did the motions with them when they did the congregation. That's it. I didn't know what I was saying. I didn't say anything because I didn't know what to say. I didn't know the initial dua. I didn't know Al-Fatiha. I didn't know. All I know is Qul Huwa Allahu Ahad. I didn't know the Salah Ibrahimiyya. I didn't know anything. I just went through the motions. Just to say, I am coming to get my religion. What is it in my religion that makes you talk like that?
Yeah. Wow.
Yeah. And that was in 1990, late 94, I believe it was. Like somewhere around there.
Yeah.
Yeah.
So, and then you slowly got into it.
And then I was moved to another prison in Illinois from Wisconsin. And then again, brothers were still saying certain things to me. And then I was still kind of rebelling a little bit. And then I told some brothers, so I stopped going to Jumu'ah after that, you know, because you hear something, it clings with you. And, you know, human nature is we forget fast. So I was like, in and out, you know, on the fence. And finally, some stuff started to happen to my family, and I needed someone other than someone to discuss things with. And I remember telling a brother, say, "Hey, man, you going to come to Jumu'ah?" I said, "Nah, you know, blah, blah, blah." And I said, "You know what, man? Bring me some stuff to read," because I still didn't understand Islam. I said, "Bring me some stuff to read. I wanted to know what makes these people, what is it that they're seeing that I'm not seeing?" So I read a book by Sheikh Zindani called This Is the Truth. And then I started to understand the scientific part of Islam, that Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala, what makes it such a truthful religion and is that Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala gives you an explanation about his creation during Prophet Muhammad's time that no one at that time had any knowledge of. So how does a guy who doesn't know how to read or write say these things that he's saying that only recently modern science is able to confirm. You know, with all the technology we have now. So these are the things that interested me most, like the Book of Science by and the video relating to the Book of Science by Dr. Maurice Bucari, who was a French embryologist, who was the top embryologist in the world. Things he had to say about Islam and what Prophet Muhammad said. And that let me know that Islam is the truth. And then I started to read from there, and I couldn't stop reading. And
that is very important what you just said. Can you repeat the two book, the names of the two books for people out there?
Yeah, the one book is called, it's a small book by Sheikh Zindani. It's called This is the Truth. And the second book is by Dr. Maurice Bucari. It's called The Book of Signs, meaning the Quran being the book of signs. So these things, and there's a video also about it if somebody would like to. I seen the video before I even looked at the book. It's called, the video is called The Book of Signs. It's very, very informative video about science within Islam. Things that Islam talks about creation that no man could have ever known during the time of Prophet Muhammad, peace be upon him. And these are the things that affirm your belief, is that the Creator is talking about his creation, and he, through an individual who cannot read or write, and it's all factual. Modern day science does not contradict any of it.
Yes.
That is what's important. And so if, you know, so obviously no one knows the creation like the Creator. And if the Creator is saying things about his creation, and now through modern science and all this technology, we realize that, A, what he said about his creation is correct. So there's no denying in this, that this has come from God, and that these are the words of God. So that was the affirming part about this religion.
And that was still in the mid-90s, right? When you read these books, or was it later?
That was in about 96, 97, 98, 99. And I read all the way up to the day I was released.
And then you, so you definitely—
I've read many books.
Reverted completely and came back to religion when you came out, or
Exactly.
During your time in there?
Yeah, to the point where I was actually put in charge of the community in Milan, Michigan. I became the, so to speak, the emir of the community, where I gave the khutbahs and stuff like that.
Really?
That's
very beautiful.
Yeah, alhamdulillah, I was very respected within the prison system, even by the administration, because I carried myself like a Muslim during those times, and inshallah, hopefully continue.
So obviously now found your religion again. There is no way you can come out and continue that lifestyle, right?
No. I mean, we all make mistakes, but no, definitely not like that lifestyle. I haven't had any dealings with law enforcement or anything. I just, you know, Iman is in general for ordinary people is always like a roller coaster. It's up and down. Even the whole Muslim society has had this up and down thing at least 6 or 7 times in history, where Iman falls low, and I believe we had fallen low and we're on our way back up as a society. We're talking about Muslims, because like I said, when I was growing up in Palestine, when I was in Palestine in the 70s, there wasn't many people wearing hijab.
Really?
No, not in Palestine. I mean, there was a lot of, you had communism going on and capitalism going on, and we're capitalist and we're communist, and Pinochet was hot and heavy, Fidel Castro and all these Marxist ideology. So I mean, it wasn't, there wasn't a lot of the young people wearing hijab. It was much different than now. And now, so for some time now, this is the 70s, for some time now, obviously, look, we went from resistance group that were secular, PLO, PFLP, the Democratic Front, from those organizations to Hamas and Islamic Jihad, and so it turns into something different, religious rather than secular.
Yeah.
Mhm.
So let me ask you, can you go back to Palestine?
No. What happened was when I was arrested in 92 by the FBI and the DEA, I had a green card. He took my green card, and in Mr. Clinton, who people think Democrats are better than Republicans, or Republicans, all the same crap. They had passed a anti-terrorist bill of 1996 that basically, after Timothy McVeigh did what he did in Oklahoma City, an American guy who was in the military, and they punished all foreigners.
Wait. You have to tell people, you have to understand the audience. They don't, that who's Timothy McVeigh, just like in a couple sentences. And what did he do?
Yeah, Timothy McVeigh was the guy that blew up the Murrah Federal Building in Oklahoma City, if you remember that.
Yeah, I do. I do know about this, but it's just like, like we have people who really
he's the guy who blew up the Murrah Building in Oklahoma City. He's an American, came out the Marines, and he was
and he had enough.
and he blew up the Murrah Building in Oklahoma City. After he did that, they passed the anti-terrorist crime bill, and who got punished? The immigrants got punished, rather.
But he's a white American guy.
And he's a white American, was born in this country, was trained in the military, and we got punished. So they actually they asked Israel to let me go back home, and Israel does not answer. They won't allow me to go back to Jerusalem. And even if they allowed me, they would probably, no, they wouldn't probably, they would grab me at the airport, put me in jail, and possibly murder me, because I've been most of my life active against the Zionist entity. If you've seen my page, well, you've heard me. You know,
I've seen your page.
And and my Facebook, I've had lost 3 Facebook accounts because of, in the last 20 years. And it's difficult to lose a Facebook account. It's not
no more.
Not quite as easy as losing your profile and your account on TikTok. It's much easier here, or on TikTok, I should say. Yeah, so that's the thing. They won't allow me to go back in. Anyway, they took.
So Israel doesn't allow you to come back.
Israel, because I'm a Jerusalemite. I was born in Jerusalem. They attempted to deny that I was, until we produced my birth certificate. And even people here in the United States were trying to, maybe you were in Jordan. I've never been in Jordan.
Oh my gosh.
Oh yeah, I had a big fight with them when they were trying to deny my identity. They do the bidding and the work of the Zionist entity here within their court system also. So I put together a whole booklet on who I am and what we are, and that we're Palestinians, and all this crazy stuff. It was so offensive looking at these Americans trying to tell me where I'm from, and trying to, then they asked the Jordanian government to take me, and they said, no, if you want to send him, you send him to his country, and which was appreciated. They said, if we take him, we would be aiding and abetting in the ethnic cleansing of his land.
You know what's so funny to me? So basically what you're saying, they tried to deport you.
Exactly.
And Israel said no.
No, they don't answer. They don't answer.
Oh, they don't answer.
Which means no. Which means no.
Exactly. Which means no.
The agent told me, he said, we just sent the thing to the Israeli government. He said, I tell you right now, they're not going to answer.
The Israeli government is not even in charge to say whether you can come or not. This is the funniest part, So that's so much to oppression.
So that's the continuation of the oppression. And I still live with it every day of my life.
How do you,
as a country that aids and abets Israel to take my land, gives them the money to take my land, turns my people into refugees, exiles us, leaves us, gives them money to build more settlements, gives them money for everything, and you tell me you want me to leave your country? It is because of you that I am countryless, stateless, or whatever you want to call it, the United States of America. And you have the audacity to tell me that I've done something wrong in your country for me to leave your country. Well, I wouldn't be here if it wasn't you that gave them my country.
What is your status now? Do you have your American citizenship?
No, 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 no. I didn't have American citizenship before I went to jail. I was a permanent resident, green card holder. No, right now I'm just in limbo, basically. I have my driver's license, my social security card. I'm able to work and live like most Americans, but they say when there's a Palestine and Jerusalem being its capital, you have to go back. I said, give me Palestine, Jerusalem as its capital, and I'll walk there.
Wow, this is so crazy.
Yeah, and I've been living with this. I'm telling you, it's a difficult situation. Look, I, if I leave Illinois to go to the next state, I have to notify them. I have to renew my driver's license every year, when usually you renew it every 4 years. I have to pay for a work permit
I'm surprised
every
that
year.
they allowed you to get married. Huh.
Yeah, well, yeah, they can't stop that. But I mean, marriage is not going to help me that way anyway.
No, I know, but I'm just surprised that you were allowed to do that. I'm just saying, I'm
Well,
being
we're allowed to
sarcastic.
do. We're allowed. I'm one of thousands.
I know,
But yeah, money. The Cubans are that way. Vietnamese are
I
that
know,
way.
I know.
Palestinians are that way. Iraqis are that way. Iranians are that way. Yeah, there's a slew
Let
of
me, but you know, and which I really love so much, right?
Mhm.
But yeah, before, okay. How did you know, being so detached from your religion, which is obviously one thing because Palestinians are not monoliths. We have Christian Palestinians, atheist Palestinians, Jewish
Jewish.
Palestinians, Muslim Palestinians. Basically everybody can be Palestinian. It
Mm.
doesn't matter what religion or no
Yes,
religion.
yes.
So, but how difficult was it to cling or stick to your Palestinian identity now being in America away from home, then leaving even your home because of all the family issues, and then, you know, living this whole street life, this whole gang life, being in prison. How difficult was it not to lose the Palestinian identity for you?
Well, it was already ingrained in me. I came at 12 years old. By 12 years old, as a Palestinian, by that time, especially if you were active, and when my dad was gone, I stayed in schools that you slept in. Most of the time, these schools are very nationalistic. So, you know, this is where I would sneak out of the school and go burn tires and throw rocks at Israeli soldiers.
Oh my God.
So it was ingrained in me already. It's something that you cannot get rid of. And you know, I read a study not too long ago that children are usually molded between birth and the age of 6.
Absolutely, yes.
Between my birth and the age of 6, I had seen Israelis come and go to my house looking for my father. I lived in a house that the front door had bullet holes all through it. The inside of the house was burned when they came to look for my uncle. They burned our house. So I lived for some time in a burned house with bullet holes at the front door. It wasn't changed till I was a bit older. So it was already ingrained in me. There was no getting rid of it. So that allowed me to hold on to my heritage. And I wasn't, maybe if I was younger, I wouldn't understand, but I understood quite well. And within me, I felt that it is incumbent upon me to defend, even as I was gangbanging. It never left my mind. Even as I was Americanized, as Americanized can be, it never left my mind and my heart.
I love that. Have you been able to reconcile with your dad after leaving home, after he left your mom and all of this, or never again?
I talked to him. I got around him a few times after my mother passed away. And a little bit before my mother, I can't deal with kind of looking at him and dealing with him. I can't even smile, to be honest with you. So I don't deal with him too much. And I'll just have to leave that to Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala.
Do you blame him a lot, or do you also blame what
I
he was
don't
put through?
I don't blame him. I don't blame him at all. I just can't be around him. I don't not for me. Not for me. I'm a man. I could take on whatever. My skin is thick. My skin is very, very thick. It's steel thick. But my mother, he made life very, very difficult and miserable for that little lady. And
you can't get over it.
Just, I mean, I get over it. I just feel like that I just can't look you in the face and deal with you. I can't smile with you because I'm uncomfortable smiling with you. I would have to smile in a very phony way, and I can't do it. You know, it's not really a smile. And I can't really look you in the face. I don't, because you might see something that might disappoint you or might upset you, because it's hard, what's in your gut usually is expressed through your face. That's why people get
I
caught
know what you
lying.
mean, like you don't
Yes,
wanna,
yes,
you can't,
yes,
you can't give him what he wants, basically.
yes. And
Yeah,
I don't want to give him what he wants.
yeah, yeah,
You
you
know,
can't,
that
yeah.
kind of thing. And I'm not holding a grudge. I'm not harboring anything. I
Mhm.
just, I just, I just can't, I can't do it.
Yeah.
Because then I would think, why is my mom not here and you gone? She deserves to be here, not you.
This
If
is
it came down
unfortunately.
to, yes.
Mm.
So, I've helped him on a few occasions, and we talked on a few occasions, and then him and my sister talk, and I kind of connected them because they were disconnected them, and I walked away from the situation.
What was the hardest thing for you, when it comes to, because, we all know Islam, the reason why Islam is, I feel like, feared from the West a lot is because Islam is such a disciplinary,
Disciplined.
relate yeah,
Yes.
religion and lifestyle, and
Yes.
of course, I mean, we're all like, a lot of us, obviously it's just human, we're not perfect and we will never be
Well,
100%, but what was the hardest for you when you kind of like slowly found your way back to Islam, with your life and the status that you had as in this street society or prison society? Was that hard to leave that
well,
all behind or lose it?
I mean, one thing about it is this, right? It actually, uh, it actually gave me more status per se. As it reaffirmed me as a strong individual. It gave me more strength, uh, and it didn't diminish anything. But what I will tell you is this: it's difficult sometimes letting go of old things. I've never was a drug user. I never drank. I hated the smell of alcohol or the taste of it. I've tasted, obviously I've drank a little bit. I couldn't stand, I don't what something that tastes nasty, smells nasty, and gets you sick. What do I want? Something with that,
Mm.
So it wasn't those kind of vices, but to be I had a temper.
Mhm.
uh the women thing, that was difficult to get over. I was a guy who had a lot of girls and a lot of girlfriends, and that kind of thing is
The
difficult.
discipline, so.
Yes, the discipline. But people fear, people. It's really governments who fear Islam, and they teach their people to fear Islam by
Yes.
telling them all kinds of nonsense. Well, because Islam gives you the independence as an individual. That's one, because you put God before anything and everything. You don't go out acting like a fool because you believe in God. God doesn't tell you go out and hurt people, but God tells you to reaffirm. But those governments like to tell their citizens that Muslims want to hurt us all because they hate our
Yes.
freedoms. In reality, what they're scared of is, imagine if Western society became Muslims. You might as well kiss usury goodbye, kiss
Yes.
alcohol goodbye, kiss many things that subjugate and oppress people goodbye.
Yes.
So this is why they don't want Islam. They don't want Islam, and they have to scare the people
Yeah.
away from Islam, because it does the Old Testament and the older religion talk against usury? Yes, but they've wiped it out, saying, oh, that's different. We don't have to follow all these things. Give on to Caesar what is Caesar's, and give on to God what is God. So obey your governments and obey God in other things. But Islam talks specifically against usury, against alcohol, against pork. Look at how much money pork makes in this country, how much money alcohol makes in this country, how much the banks make in this country, or in the world over, from riba, from usury. So that's what they keep them scared about.
So to switch lanes one more time, the books that you
Mm.
wrote is My Land, Palestine, and the Jerusalem-Gangster, which I, by the way, love the title. I think is
Yeah.
definitely stands out and is very catchy. Which
Yeah.
book did you write first?
I wrote my life story, The Jerusalem-Gangster.
Jerusalem-Gangster.
And I didn't edit it. There's some run-on sentences, there's typos. I wanted it to be from a kid who failed grammar school, never went to high school, and received his GED in federal prison. So I went to get it edited by a friend of mine who has a PhD in literature, and then I stopped him and I just published it myself just like that. And response from people has been amazing. I mean, there's reviews. There's a review from Canada. A guy says that this is the best book he's read since he's read the autobiography of Malcolm X.
Oh my gosh, I get goosebumps.
Yeah, there's reviews in there that say this book should be a movie. This book should be made into a Netflix movie or Hulu and all these other things. There's reviews that say this book made me cry. There's reviews that say this book is no fluff. It's real life stuff. I mean, it's great reviews. So I'm not Shakespeare, so it's not written like Shakespeare.
It's not about that.
But the life story is amazing.
It's from the heart.
Is amazing. It's amazing. Well, the obstacles and the road and the path is some people say I read this book in 2 days. I couldn't stop reading it. I couldn't put it down. Because
when did you publish it?
2019.
Oh, and then what sparked, I mean, it's obvious what sparked to write that book, but what sparked to write My Land, Palestine, which is obviously obvious
Well,
as
what
well,
sparked me to write the first book was in 2006, I went to a fundraiser in Michigan for a nonprofit organization here in Chicago. And the guy that ran the organization, I went with him to support him. He introduced me to a Syrian doctor in Ann Arbor, Michigan. And he told the Syrian doctor, talk to Imad, I think you'll find his life interesting. So the doctor said, yeah, tell me. And he scooted next to me. I talked to him for about 5 minutes, 5 to 8 minutes max. And he stopped me and took me by the hand to the guy that I went with. And he said, hey, excuse me. He cut the guy off from talking to a Bangladeshi doctor. And he said, this guy needs to write a book about his life. That was in 2006. And I thought the doctor was crazy because I actually thought, you don't see your life as being a certain thing. You just look at it, it's normal life.
Yeah.
From there all the way to 2017, 18, I had, I don't know how many people when they know me and talk to me, say, you're a very interesting person. You ever think about writing a book? And then, enough time said, you start to wonder, what is it, because you don't see it yourself, because it's very difficult for us to see ourselves. And then finally, I ran into a friend of mine who wrote a book, not a true story, and I said, you know what? I'm gonna write a book about my life, and that was the thing. The second book, it was actually I was pushed by TikTok. They deleted 2 of my accounts. I was ready to give up, and a friend of mine says, I'm Palestinian Muslim. He says, hey, he said, man, some of the stuff you say, I've never heard in my life as a Palestinian. He says, you ever think about writing a book? And that pushed me to write that book. And I had it put together. It's a bunch of transplanted information, what the book is, based on my arguments for most of my life, what I've had to argue with people to legitimize the Palestinian issue. And I finished that book in 6 months. It was published and everything in 6 months.
So I just want to say to the audience, we're going to have everything in the show notes, some links to the books, some links to how you guys can follow him on his social media. So it's My Land, Palestine, and it's The Jerusalem-Gangster. These are the 2 books. Before we close out here, I want to ask you one question. And this is a question, to me personally, the question is, how do I say, crystal clear, but we have to always understand we have audience that were not aware of the issue. It's just now that the Western world is waking up.
Yeah.
Exactly.
You mean the situation in Palestine?
Exactly, the situation in Palestine.
Yes.
So can you when we talk about the West Bank and Gaza, These two places were never connected. People were never allowed after the Zionist regime came in to, like, people from Gaza cannot come to the West Bank, and West Bank people cannot go to Gaza. Is this right?
Yes, yes, yes. There was a period. No, no, now here's the thing. When they took over in 67, people were allowed to move back and forth. It stopped when they did the so-called Oslo Peace Accord. And they did the Oslo Peace Accord. That Oslo is so unjust that it's a joke. The Palestinians, we should have never went for it. I didn't go for it because I it's impossible to make peace with someone who says, I'm taking all your land. You're being foolish. Yeah. Zionism is taking Palestine, historical Palestine, for Zionists and everyone else out. That's the reality of the situation.
Yeah.
But Palestine, but West Bank and Gaza is only 22% of historical Palestine. So, I mean, this issue goes in stages. You have the 48th sector, the 67th sector, then the 94 Accord, where it separated Palestine, at least the West Bank, from Gaza.
Yeah.
There was a small amount of time where people were able to travel back and forth a corridor, but it didn't last long. And people were obviously had an election, and people elected the age group. It was a political movement. And the United States and the whole world said, go ahead, elect, and whoever you elect will accept it. Well, they elected these people, and everybody else reneged and said, no, you elected them. We're gonna put a siege on you, an embargo, land, air, and sea. So it's ridiculous. So yeah, but definitely it's very difficult for people to commute between the West Bank and Gaza.
Absolutely. Yeah, I just wanted to clarify this. Now, my last closing question is, most of us, especially people with, background from either the Middle East, North Africa, or wherever, we're very much aware of the issue from years, we kind of like grew up with it. This is nothing new. But it really kind of like hit me. I didn't think that I would ever in my lifetime see the Western world waking up to it. How was it for you, or how is it for you to see now white people, every people, standing up for Palestine all of a sudden?
Yeah, well, here's the thing. Let me, just so we're clear, okay? Yeah. The Palestinian people, we have been portrayed as these Arabs who came and invaded this land, and we are occupiers, and that these people who call themselves Israelis were actually the original people of the land who were dispersed throughout the world, and they're just coming back to their land. That's a cockamamie story. The Palestinians are, most Palestinians are not ethnically Arab. Yes. We became Arab when we learned the Arabic language, and we reverted to the religion of Islam in 638 AD, when Umar ibn al-Khattab came to Palestine and liberated Jerusalem from the Crusaders, Sophronius. It says, if you look in encyclopedia books, it tells you the inhabitants in and around Jerusalem liked the Muslims so much, they reverted to the religion of Islam, learned the Arabic language, learned the Arabic/Muslim culture, hence the term Arabized Arabs. So we have always been there. We are the people, most of us are Canaanites. Through testing, it's been proven from fossils that have been tested against us against that. The Palestinians and Lebanese are the closest to the Canaanites. Okay, so we've always been there. When Prophet Abraham came to that land, Canaanites were there, among a few other groups. So there are Palestinians that are Canaanites and from the tribes of Israel who became Christian, then became Muslim. There's a group of Jews in and around Nablus to this day, the Sumerians. Those are actually the original followers of Prophet Abraham and such. So those are Palestinian Jews. So these people that came to our land are predominantly the Zionist entity, the Zionist ideology was brought in from Europe. Vast majority of Jewish people today are Ashkenazi Jews. 80% or more are Ashkenazi Jews. Then you have, let's say, the Mizrahi. Really, Mizrahi is a new term. The true term for Mizrahi is Arab Jews. Those are Iraqis and so on and so on. So they change names in order to trick the people. So I myself have been, long before TikTok, fighting for the Palestinian cause on other social medias. for the last 20 years or possibly a bit more. So we've been hard, me, a bunch of people like me, especially non-Arab, non-Muslim, non-Palestinians have been fighting a fight where unfortunately even some of our own people were on social media not defending our cause, letting another group of people fight. So what happened was there was a lot of educating going on social media. People were hearing it, but they weren't seeing it. They were seeing some things, but what happened after October 7th has not only awakened the world as to the plight of the Palestinian people, but has awakened the world to the plight of themselves based on what they've seen about their own governments, that their own governments are complicit in this, that their own governments are actually controlled by this Zionist entity, that AIPAC, for instance, why I say controlled by the Zionist entity, AIPAC bribes and controls many congressmen and representatives and senators within the United States, whether it's state level or federal level. So it has awakened the world to our plight and to their plight. Yeah. And so it's amazing. It's high times. It's high times for this situation. I say, you know, when I see things like this, because my life story deals with so much of the Palestinian issue and the plight, and it's such an interesting story. Somebody told me, he said, you know what, it would be high times for your book to possibly become a movie because of now people really want to understand the situation.
We will talk about this. We will talk about it.
Inshallah. Inshallah. So that's that.
I love it. I love it. No, I was that was also something that was in my head as well, because you know, we don't have enough of these stories being portrayed in movies the right way. This is the next thing as well.
No.
But Emad, I want to say thank you so much for joining me today. It was absolutely a pleasure. It was very informative, and I really, really hope I can have you back here again.
Inshallah, anytime. Inshallah, anytime. Thank you for having me. May Allah reward you, and may Allah, inshallah, wake the people up even more, and they will.
Inshallah.
And they will. It's high times, and it's there's no turning back from this. Inshallah. Barakallah fiki. Thank you, sister. Assalamu alaikum.
Thank you so much. Okay, guys, I hope you really enjoyed this episode as much as I did. And check out the books. Everything will be in the show notes. And I will be back with a brand new episode next week.